Unlimited paid time off sounds like an absolute gift, but the spreadsheet tells a very different story. Imagine you show up to work and your boss hands you a blank check for your time off. It feels like ultimate freedom. But under old school vacation policies, those unused days are a legally owed benefit. Companies have to carry them as a massive financial liability, and, in many states, they must pay them out in cold, hard cash when you leave. Switch that wording to unlimited, and that legal liability effectively vanishes overnight. At the stroke of a pen, corporations can save an estimated $224 billion. Meanwhile, the data shows that employees with unlimited time off do not take long European-style sabbaticals. They take about the same number of days as everyone else, and sometimes even less, with absolutely no payout if they quit or get laid off. It is the perfect corporate magic trick. Erase a massive debt, keep people working roughly the exact same amount, and market the whole thing as workplace freedom. Before we get into the hard math of how this actually works on a balance sheet, let us talk about the sheer brilliance of the marketing. Corporate America managed to take a massive liability reduction strategy and package it as a luxury perk for high performers. When you hear the word unlimited, your brain immediately goes to all-inclusive resorts, endless summers, and zero micromanagement from your boss. But the reality of corporate finance is much more calculated than that. Every single benefit a company offers has a highly modelled financial cost attached to it. Nothing is truly unlimited when you are operating a for-profit enterprise. The Chief Financial Officer knows exactly what they are doing, and understanding this math is going to fundamentally change how you negotiate your next job offer. By the way, if you appreciate this kind of clear, no-nonsense breakdown of how corporate finance actually impacts your wallet, the best return on your time today is to hit the subscribe button. I do not do hype, and I do not do fluff. Just the mechanics of money. Let us start by looking at how vacation actually functions inside a normal business operation. Most of us think of paid time off as just a nice perk, right up there with free coffee in the break room or casual Fridays. But to a finance department, vacation days are a highly regulated, mathematically precise obligation. When you accept a job that offers a traditional accrued time off policy, you are not just being granted permission to occasionally skip work. You are entering into a binding financial contract. Every single pay period, a fraction of a day is added to your account. And in many states across the country, those accrued days are legally classified as earned wages. They belong to you just as much as the money sitting in your checking account belongs to you. You traded your labor for those hours, and the company legally recognizes that trade. That fundamental legal status is the entire reason the unlimited system was invented in the first place, and it is where we need to start our analysis. The common belief about traditional accrued time off is that it is incredibly rigid and restrictive. You get your 15 or 20 days, and you have to meticulously count them down throughout the entire year. If you want to take an extra Friday off for a wedding, you have to run the calculations to make sure you have enough left in the bank for the holidays. It feels like a leash holding you back from living your life. But what we often fail to realize as employees is that this rigidity is actually a very clear sign of value. Because those days are strictly counted, they are legally binding. The rigidity is the exact mechanism that forces the company to acknowledge that they owe you something real. Every day you do not take is a day that the company is legally holding in escrow for you. When a system is annoying to track, it is usually because money is heavily involved. The inconvenience of requesting time off is the price you pay for guaranteed legal protection of your wages. Let us run the hard numbers on what that legally binding protection actually looks like on the company books. Imagine a mid-sized company with 1,000 employees and the average salary across the board is $80,000 a year. Under a traditional system, let us assume employees accrue 3 weeks of vacation. If the average worker carries a balance of just 5 unused days at any given time, we can calculate the exact corporate liability. At an $80,000 salary, one working day is worth roughly $308. Multiply that $308 by 5 unused days, and the company owes each individual employee about $1,540. Now scale that up. Across 1,000 employees, that is over $1.5 million of pure vacation liability sitting right there on the corporate balance sheet. That is $1.5 million of cash that the company is legally forbidden from treating as pure profit, simply because their employees decided to save a few days for winter. Now think about the psychology of that $1.5 million strictly from the perspective of executive leadership. That is real money that they legally cannot touch. It is a debt that hangs over their heads every single quarter. If there is a sudden economic downturn and the company is forced to lay off 10% of the workforce to save cash, they do not just quietly lose those employees. They immediately have to write a massive check for all of that accrued, unused vacation time upon termination. The very structure of a traditional policy makes the company financially vulnerable to the work and saving habits of its own workforce. It creates an underlying psychological friction for the finance department. Every time an employee chooses not to go to the beach, the company gets slightly more financially leveraged. This is exactly why human resources is constantly nagging you to take your days off at the end of the year. They are not worried about your mental health. They are trying to clear the balance sheet before the annual audit. So, what is the protocol here? If you are operating under a traditional time-off system right now, you need to fundamentally reclassify those days. Stop looking at your vacation balance as merely an allowance of leisure time and start looking at it as an alternative savings account funded entirely by your employer. When you are negotiating a raise or an internal promotion, the amount of accrued time you have in the bank is leverage. If you know you are planning to leave a company in 6 months, hoarding a few of those days is a strategic and mathematically sound way to build your own severance package before you hand in your notice. You should treat that vacation balance with the exact same level of respect and financial planning that you apply to your 401k match. It is part of your total compensation package, and you need to protect it. Do not let management pressure you into burning it just so they can hit their quarterly liability reduction targets. But what happens if a company decides they simply do not want to carry that $1.5 million debt anymore? They could try to take your vacation days away entirely, but that would cause a massive immediate revolt. Or they could do something much more clever. If you think that traditional systems are rigid and annoying, wait until you see how corporations legally vaporize hundreds of billions of dollars in owed wages while making you thank them for it. This is where the trap is set. The setup for unlimited paid time off is a masterpiece of modern corporate storytelling. The pitch to the employee goes exactly like this. We are all adults here. We do not want to micromanage your time or count your hours. We care strictly about your output and your results, not the amount of time you sit at your desk. Therefore, we are abolishing the vacation tracker entirely. Take whatever time you need, whenever you happen to need it, as long as the work gets done. On the surface, it sounds incredibly progressive. It feels like a massive upgrade in workplace trust and autonomy. The common myth is that the company is giving you the gift of infinite freedom, removing the shackles of corporate bureaucracy. You imagine yourself taking every Friday off in the summer and finally getting that perfect work-life balance. The reality, however, is that they are quietly shredding a binding financial contract and replacing it with a handshake agreement that holds absolutely no legal weight whatsoever. Here is the hard math behind that newly granted corporate freedom. Because there is no longer a formal accrual schedule, no specific number of vacation days are ever actually earned by you. And because nothing is officially earned, there is absolutely no balance for the company to track. From a strict accounting perspective, if there is no tracked balance, there is zero liability to report on the balance sheet. That $1.5 million debt we calculated for our hypothetical mid-sized company completely vanishes into thin air. There is nothing to pay out when you quit, and there is nothing to pay out if you get laid off. Wharton professor Peter Capelli pointed out that switching to unlimited policies can erase around $224 billion in vacation liabilities across companies in the United States, quite literally at the stroke of a pen. It is one of the largest transfers of wealth from employee benefits back to corporate cash reserves in modern history, and it is entirely legal. The psychological twist here is profound and heavily favors the employer. When a company moves from an earned vacation model to an unlimited model, the nature of the arrangement shifts fundamentally. It moves from being an explicit, legally enforceable contractual obligation to being a vague, unwritten moral obligation. They no longer owe you time off in exchange for your labor. They are simply allowing you to request it out of the goodness of their hearts. And as we all know from operating in the real world, moral obligations do not hold up in civil court, and they certainly do not show up on your final severance paycheck. The company has completely removed their financial risk while brilliantly appearing to be endlessly generous. They have outsourced the stress of managing vacation time directly onto your shoulders. You are no longer cashing in a benefit you rightfully own. You are now asking for a personal favor every single time you want to step away from your computer for a long weekend. Your protocol when encountering an unlimited time-off offer during a job hunt is to instantly adjust your total compensation math. If you are choosing between a job paying $90,000 with 3 weeks of accrued vacation and a job paying $90,000 with unlimited vacation, you must understand that the second offer is mathematically lower. The first offer includes a guaranteed cash equivalent if you do not use the days. The second offer literally does not. When negotiating for a role that features an unlimited policy, you must push for a higher base salary or a signing bonus to offset the elimination of that guaranteed legal benefit. Never accept an unlimited policy at face value as a perk. Treat it as a missing asset in your compensation package. Calculate what 3 weeks of pay equals at your hourly rate and add that number to your base salary request. Force the company to compensate you in actual cash for the legal guarantee they are stripping away from the benefits package. Most people stop here and assume that even if they lose the guaranteed cash payout, they can just take 5 weeks off during the year and beat the system. They think they can outsmart the policy. But human behavior is entirely predictable, and corporate human resources departments know exactly what you are going to do next. Let me show you the psychological trap that costs the average worker thousands of dollars a year in unpaid labor. The myth we eagerly tell ourselves when we get our first job with unlimited time off is that we are going to hack the matrix. We assume we will take every single Friday off in the summer, maybe take a spontaneous 3-week trip to Japan in the fall, and generally live a much more relaxed, low-stress life. We deeply believe that without a strict numerical limit enforced by human resources, our natural human desire for leisure will simply take over. We think we are built for endless vacations. But the corporate environment we work in is specifically and carefully designed to prevent that exact scenario from happening. The reality is that in a high-performance corporate setting, giving employees total freedom without clear boundaries usually just leads to severe anxiety. When there are no rules, people default to doing whatever protects their job security the most, which usually means putting their head down and never leaving the office. Let us look at the actual behavioral data on how many days people truly take when the limit is removed. Broad human resources analyses find that employees under traditional accrued systems take about 14 days per year. Employees under unlimited systems take about 16 days per year. On paper, it looks like a tiny win for the worker, but that average hides a much darker reality. In many high-pressure technology and finance companies, workers with unlimited time off actually take far fewer days than they did under a traditional system. Industry analysts note that employers often unofficially cap usage at 3 to 6 weeks anyway, meaning the unlimited aspect is purely fictional from the start. Furthermore, because there is no mandatory minimum, many employees find themselves taking less than 10 days a year. The policy creates a bell curve, where a few confident executives take a month off, while the vast majority of middle management barely scrapes together a week, bringing the statistical average up, while the reality on the ground is pure burnout. The psychological mechanism driving this widespread burnout is the complete lack of a reference point. With traditional vacation systems, you know with absolute certainty that you have 15 days. Taking all 15 feels completely legitimate because you earned them through your labour. Your colleagues have the exact same 15 days. It is completely normalised and expected. With unlimited systems, there is no number. You do not know what is considered normal or acceptable, so you start looking around to see what your peers are doing. And because absolutely nobody wants to look like the slacker who is abusing the generous company policy, a silent, invisible race to the bottom begins. The guilt of leaving your busy team hanging becomes the new enforcement mechanism. The company does not need to hire a manager to tell you to stay at work. They have successfully weaponized your own ambition and your fear of peer judgment to keep you chained to your desk, completely free of charge. The protocol to survive this psychological trap is to establish your own aggressive baseline the very moment you are hired. Do not wait for a manager or a vague company culture to tell you what is acceptable. Look at your total compensation package, consider your mental health needs, and decide that your personal minimum is 20 days a year. Put those 20 days on the calendar in January. Block out the weeks before the chaos of the first quarter even begins. If you leave your time off ambiguous and open-ended, the daily pressure of the job will continuously push your vacation down the priority list until the year is completely over and you have taken barely a week to yourself. You have to force the corporate system to react to your boundaries, rather than allowing your boundaries to be slowly eroded by the corporate system. Treat your self-imposed 20 days as a hard, non-negotiable requirement of your continued employment. Now this is where conventional wisdom says you should just be incredibly grateful to have a well-paying job with flexible hours and trust from leadership. I am going to tell you the exact opposite. Because every single day you decide not to take is a day you are actively donating free labour back to a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Here is the invisible math you are missing. The situation most dedicated employees find themselves in is thinking that skipping a vacation day here or there is no big deal in the grand scheme of things. You are incredibly busy. A major client project is launching, and you quietly tell yourself you will just take the time off later when things calm down. The myth you are operating under is that your time is fluid and you are just shifting your personal schedule around to be a good team player. But in an unlimited corporate system, your time is not fluid. It is extremely zero-sum. If you do not take the day today, it is gone forever. There is no magical bank account collecting the monetary value of your personal sacrifice to be paid out later. When you skip a day to help the team, you are not deferring your compensation. You are permanently deleting it from your life, while the company reaps 100% of the productivity benefit of your sacrifice. Let us calculate the exact cash value of that donated labour. We established earlier that at an $80,000 annual salary, your daily rate is roughly $308. Suppose that for your long-term mental and physical health, you really should be taking 20 days off a year to reset. But because of the persistent guilt and the ambiguous, always-on company culture, you only take 12 days. That means you worked 8 extra days that you did not necessarily have to, for absolutely $0 extra on your paycheck. 8 days multiplied by $308 is nearly $2,500 of your highly skilled labor that you just handed back to the company for free. If the company asked you to write them a check for $2,500 out of your personal bank account, you would quit on the spot. But under this policy, you willingly hand over the exact same value in free labor without a second thought. The psychology of this invisible donation is incredibly beneficial to the employer. They have effectively crowdsourced their productivity enforcement directly into your own brain. By removing the official bank of days and the strict human resources tracker, they rely entirely on your own imposter syndrome and career anxiety to keep you quietly sitting at your desk. They do not ever have to formally tell you no when you ask for time off. They just have to create an underlying environment where you feel too stressed and too essential to even ask in the first place. You end up strictly policing yourself, saving the company massive amounts of money in lost productivity, while slowly burning yourself out. The company looks like the good guy, offering infinite rest, while you systematically work yourself into the ground, trying to prove that you are worthy of the flexibility they technically never gave you. Your protocol to combat this is highly analytical. Calculate your true hourly wage at the end of every single year. Take your total salary and divide it by the actual number of hours you worked, making sure to include all of the vacation days you skipped and the late nights you put in. You will quickly realize that by drastically underutilizing your unlimited time off, you are actively lowering your own true hourly rate. You are making yourself cheaper to employ. Treat your ideal number of vacation days as mandatory dividend payouts from the company to your life. If you do not take them, you are willingly leaving your personal dividends sitting comfortably in the corporate treasury. Stop donating your time to an entity that already models your maximum output into their quarterly revenue projections. You owe them the job you were hired to do. You do not owe them your recovery time. If you are starting to realize just how many of these carefully hidden financial traps exist in everyday corporate life, I want to personally invite you to join our inner circle here on the channel. Click the join button below the video to become one of the optimizers. Channel members get absolute priority replies to their comments, meaning if you have a highly specific question about your own compensation package or a weird policy at your job, I will see it first and break it down for you. You also get custom sketch badges next to your name to stand out in the community. It is the absolute best way to directly support the channel and ensure I can keep producing these deep dive financial analyses week after week without relying on corporate sponsors. We are going to look at the final structural asymmetry of this policy next, and you definitely want to understand how managers use this loophole. Let us look at the complete illusion of equal power under these so-called flexible policies. The initial setup heavily implies that you and the company are operating on a perfectly level playing field. You ask for time off, they grant it, and everyone acts in totally reasonable good faith. But because there is no formal written policy manual dictating exactly what you are mathematically owed, the power dynamic entirely shifts away from you. You are no longer confidently referencing a legally binding employee handbook. You are essentially throwing yourself at the mercy of the managerial court every single time you want to go to the beach or visit your family. The lack of written rules does not mean there are no rules. It simply means the rules are entirely determined by whatever mood your direct manager happens to be in on a Tuesday morning. The math behind this massive power shift reveals itself clearly in the unofficial caps that companies enforce. Broad data gathered by industry experts shows that many modern companies operate with a hidden shadow policy. They boldly advertise unlimited time off to recruit top-tier talent, but internally, mid-level managers are automatically flagged by software if an employee requests more than 3 or 4 weeks in a calendar year. It is unlimited in the glossy marketing brochure, but it is strictly capped in the back-end human resources management software. This creates a deeply deceptive asymmetry. The corporation gets all the public relations benefit of being viewed as a progressive, modern workplace, while simultaneously maintaining the strict, rigid operational control of a traditional manufacturing floor. You are playing a game where only the house knows the actual rules. The psychological toll this invisible cap takes on the average employee is significant. Real-world accounts across professional networking sites are full of identical stories about people being subtly shamed by leadership for taking long trips. You get the passive-aggressive comments in the team chat like, "Wow, another week off for you, must be nice." Or you feel immense, paralysing stress about asking for time during the busy season because there is no guaranteed bank of days to mathematically back up your request. Your immediate manager becomes the absolute, unquestioned gatekeeper of your physical rest, and their final approval might be heavily influenced by how much they personally like you, rather than what you have actually earned through your hard work. It turns vacation from a guaranteed right into a political favour. The protocol here requires extreme, meticulous documentation on your part. In an unlimited system, you must keep a precise written record of all your time off requests and their resulting approvals or denials. If you begin to notice a clear pattern where your requests are being subtly denied, delayed, or actively discouraged, you need to bring that compiled data directly to human resources. Frame it respectfully, not as an emotional complaint, but as a professional request for operational clarity. Ask them to clearly define the actual unofficial parameters of the unlimited policy, so you can adequately plan your year without disrupting the team. Force the company to say the quiet part out loud and put their hidden rules in writing. Before we wrap this analysis up, I need to address the massive elephant in the room. Some of you watching right now might be thinking, "Tom, my company has unlimited time off, and it is actually an amazing, life-changing benefit." And you know what? You might be exactly right. We will get to the highly specific conditions where this exact policy actually works in your favour in a minute. But first, we need to understand the absolute exception to the corporate rule. The myth among cynical workers is that unlimited time off is inherently malicious and evil 100% of the time. That is simply not entirely accurate. The system itself is just an operational tool. It is a neutral financial and management mechanism. In a truly outcomes-driven, high-trust environment, this policy can actually function exactly the beautiful way it is advertised on the career page. If you are fortunate enough to work for a company where leadership truly does not care when, where, or how you work, as long as the quarterly revenue targets are consistently hit, unlimited time off can be an incredible, unmatched lifestyle asset. It can allow for deep focus work, followed by proper, extended recovery. But those environments are rare. The corporate math changes drastically and turns in the favour of the employee when a company deliberately introduces mandatory minimums. Leading industry analysts point out that the select companies doing this successfully have realized the exact psychological trap we discussed earlier. To effectively counter the employee guilt and prevent burnout, they actually enforce a hard operational floor. They will boldly mandate that every single employee must take an absolute minimum of 3 weeks off per calendar year. By proactively setting a hard mathematical minimum, they instantly reintroduce the missing reference point. They entirely remove the social ambiguity and legally protect the employee from participating in the silent race to the bottom. A minimum creates a safety net of rest. The internal psychology in these high-trust environments is totally different, because executive leadership actually models the correct behaviour. If the Vice President of Sales takes 4 full weeks off in August and goes completely off the grid without checking a single email, it sends a massive psychological green light down to the rest of the company. The overarching culture smoothly shifts from a toxic, competitive workaholism to a focus on sustainable, long-term performance. But doing this correctly requires an immense amount of emotional intelligence and discipline from the entire management team, which, as we all know from experience, is not exactly the default factory setting in most modern corporate environments. Your personal protocol for quickly evaluating a genuinely good unlimited policy versus a disguised scam policy is to actively look for the no contact rule. Ask directly during the interview process if they have mandatory minimum vacation days enforced by leadership. Ask if there is a strict culture of no contact while on vacation, meaning your corporate email is genuinely shut off and nobody will text your personal phone. If the recruiter looks at you slightly confused or enthusiastically brags about how everyone works so hard they rarely even think about taking time off, you are walking blindfolded right into the trap. If they proudly tell you about their mandatory 3-week minimum, you have found a corporate unicorn. To accurately summarize the mechanics of this entire system, you have to look simultaneously at both the cold balance sheet and messy human behavior. When a company switches to an unlimited policy without proactively setting mandatory minimums, they execute a flawless, highly profitable financial maneuver. They instantly and legally eliminate hundreds of thousands or even hundreds of millions of dollars in previously owed vacation wage liabilities. They completely remove the operational risk of having to write massive cash payout checks during an unexpected round of corporate layoffs. And they achieve all of this incredible financial security for their own balance sheet, while simultaneously branding the entire exercise as a massive, progressive favor to you. The ultimate takeaway here is that your personal time has a highly specific, easily calculable dollar value attached to it. Traditional, old-school policies legally force the company to acknowledge and respect that value on a locked spreadsheet. Unlimited policies deliberately rely on your social guilt and cultural confusion to make that immense value simply disappear into thin air. Do not let the human resources marketing dictate your personal boundaries. If you currently have unlimited time off, treat it as a strict mandate to optimize your own life. Set your personal baseline, aggressively track your days, and completely refuse to donate your hard-earned labor back to a company that already factors your eventual burnout into their quarterly projections. Now, I want to turn this analysis over to the ultimate peer review process. If you currently work a job that has unlimited time off, exactly how many days did you actually take last calendar year? Drop your honest number in the comments below right now. I want to see if our audience data matches the national averages, or if you guys are actively beating the corporate system. The comment section is absolutely the best place to see how this specific policy is really playing out across different modern industries. Thank you for taking the time to run the hard numbers with me today. Stay sharp, protect your time, and I will see you in the next breakdown.